Hello all dear friends, I'm talking about an anime called Ice Blade Wizard Rules the World. But before we get into the world of protein and healthy magic with programming, I want to ask you to do me two favors, as is traditional for me. The first is to like the video. The second is to subscribe to the channel. Here school, beautiful students from Danish families, between them comes our main character named Ray White, a country boy with a good heart and good skills. But unfortunately, just his poor pedigree situation immediately brings him into trouble in the form of local school disapproval. The boy is shunned by the other students, his personality instantly put down. In addition, one boy, Albert Alium, almost got into a fight on the first day of school with the newcomer. Fortunately, the clash between the nobility and the poor guy was stopped by a gorgeous girl named Amelia Rose, the first daughter of the most powerful family. And despite her status, she stepped in from behind the lath. She apologized for Albert and offered her hand in case of any incidents. Of course, such an act was surprising to the members of the academy. After all, how did this daughter of nobility and touch a poor man? What a disgusting thing to do. Fortunately, after the introduction ceremony, the principal of the academy and the beginning of the first lesson, all discussions have quieted down and finally Rai can begin to teach. However, the boy at the first lesson immersed in some kind of memories. Because of this, she had to wake up the teacher Helena Grady. She doesn't tolerate people in her classes being caught up in their own thoughts. After all, Helena's teachings are extremely important in the world of magic. She tells us basically about the whole base. It is from her that we learn about the several ranks of wizards, the most important of which are Platinum and Sacred. By the way, the sacred ranks existed for all time, and there is too little information about them. Only the identity of the holders is known. They are the principal Abby Garnett, the explorer Carol Caroline, and the wizard of the Ice Blade, who left the world of the unknown. He was especially remembered during the long-ago war, but after it ended, the warrior of the blade disappeared. Actually, even in the class the basics of coding magic were touched upon, though by and large the rest did not play a role, as Ray shifted his activity into another direction, and more specifically into meeting his friends. The first possible friend was a humble half-elf girl, Elise Griffith, who loves to read books by a scholar named Lydia Ainsworth. Ray, on the other hand, having beautifully informed the girl of her pretty ears, instantly became a pleasant companion for Elise. The second companion, on the other hand, was the muscular Evie Armstrong, and with him there was a pure synergy of muscles, and the men realized abruptly that they suited each other as great friends. And overall around school, Ray had a lot of cordial interactions with different people, and members of popular families and not really. So it's safe to say the main character is great with people. However, he still can't get along with Albert. He has the blue-haired man who hates Ray and everything just because he is poor. Nevertheless, he tries to ignore external stimuli. Instead, he keeps doing the things he loves, such as playing sports, socializing with the Hunters Club, and joining the Women's Club. And not to get a relationship, but just to get cozy with the girls. And no doubt such an excellent man for the company as a Ray could not in the end not be rewarded for it in the form of an even closer relationship with Amelia Rose. She has a couple of other friends with her. Company with a commoner will perform in the school's forest survival exam. The rules were announced by the organizer Helena. It's very simple. You need to find a mark in the thick of the woods, fight with monsters, and survive. So, without slowing down, let's get started. Squad certainly looks much more successful in terms of focus in contrast to their peers, but even they sometimes have a hard time. Although, using the power of the Ray, the team can hardly be afraid of anything. At least, so it seems to everyone. But in fact, the situation is not so straightforward. Because the day before the exam, Ray warned the principal about the possible inclusion of hidden enemies in the school grounds, and asked to be a boy to be careful. And as luck would have it, trouble did happen. In the woods, when Ray ran to Albert's cry for help, he saw a monster, seemingly nothing terrible. But later a hooded traveler furtively interacted with the monster's body from afar, from which the creature evolved into another form and nearly killed all the students. Had it not been for the Ray, there would no doubt have been casualties among the boys. Now, however, another question arises. Where does Ray get this kind of power, capable of putting down a monster of high complexity? And what else is the main character hiding? Well, the answer to many things can be given by the scientist Lydia Ainsworth, who I have already mentioned. She is also an old close friend of Ray's, who knows a lot of information about the boy that will be revealed a little later. Now her focus of conversation touches on an entirely different part of the problem. Hovering over the wizards, Lydia warns Ray of the active movements of a new group of sick scientists calling themselves eugenicists. They want access to people's living brains, and they must be stopped. Ray learns the rest as he goes through his life at the academy. In the meantime, let's return to everyday life, where the hated Mr. Albert is ready to avenge Ray's personal humiliation at any hour, led by the same stranger in the hood. So it's not hard to guess that Ray's quiet life will soon be overshadowed by Albert's invitation to a decisive duel for the right to be worthy. Naturally, the answer to Albert was given at the same second and the battle, which will find out which of the guys cooler started. Under the influence of raging anger and all his memories of his unhappy childhood, Albert attacked first. Using real weapons and all his magic, he cast a ton of spells on the Ray, and in response every fireball was carved with the sword of Messers. Yes, such art that Albert had to surrender, and the duel ended in favor of the commoner. There would be no applause, really. After all, suddenly some mysterious force knocked everyone off their feet at the place where the fight was held. And then its creator came out into the light. More precisely, the creator, who we knew before the performance, the teacher Kalina Grady, a traitor and collectively one of the eugenics. Her target was the Academy's own students. For eugenics, as it turns out, feelings of morality and humanity pale before the research of recently dead people, especially fresh wizards. How by discovering some new secret for the world, by digging into their brains, will allow anyone to rise in wealthy circles. And for eugenicists, the end justifies the means. But here is where Ray, who gathered his will into a fist and revealed his secret in front of all his friends, would disagree. The protagonist is one of the 7 carriers of the sacred rank, a warrior of the Ice Blade since childhood. Rai went through a war where he has known the pain of losing people dear to him. So from now on, all who wish to harm the defenseless will have to stand face to face with the Ice Killer, destroying at the moment the traitor Kalina, bringing from there a hopeless situation, when the girl used the weapon of eugenics, which turned her into a vile creature with a lot of stamina and strength. Now the battle for the Ice Warrior enters its second phase. More difficult, all the more so for the time being. As it awakens the power of the ice, the Rhea begins to absorb its own ability. It is so serious that before the end of the fight you can really fly away into the afterlife. Fortunately, Ray knows how to use the time, and in the most efficient steps comes closer to the cherished victory, ridding his friends of the magical attraction and freezing Helena forever. The only flaw is that following such a fight with an icy outburst, Ray fell asleep for a period of time. And what better way to sleep than with sad childhood memories? That's right, nothing. That's why GG in a coma once again saw his life changing. Turns out the boy was found already an orphan. No one wanted him except for a team of the strongest heroes, of which Carol, now a powerful explorer, and Lydia, who essentially replaced Ray's mother and martial arts master in one person, stood out, also passing her ice power to the boy, the first ice heroine. Tragically, even such positive news for little Jay could not overshadow the future war losses of his friends, who died right before the boy's eyes. At them in turn, Ray woke up. Death, war, and sadness are all behind him again. In the present, the protagonist is surrounded by cheerful friends, so ironically to tears reminiscent of his childhood paradise. By the way, in addition to faithful partners, Alat, restoring strength, had time to visit an Albert, who took asking forgiveness for their foolish mistakes. Albert is by no means a bad man, and he's just unlucky, and he will try for Ray's sake to fix himself for the better. It is also fortunate that Albert will not be changing alone. Amelia Rose also had a dramatic need for an upgrade. First of all, to get more attention from her husband, and secondly, because of the upcoming tournament of magical school children. And there's a nuance to it. Amelia is afraid of her impending encounter at the tournament with another girl from a family of similar status, Ariana Algren. Amelia had been friends with the girl with the crystal white hair since childhood. But then, as soon as Ariana surpassed her friend in battle, their relationship fell apart. It should be understood that it was Amelia who initiated the end of the friendship, as her father had been accustomed to taking only the first place since she was little. Because of the family responsibilities assigned to Amelia, the girl finally broke everything. And when it turned out that she would have to meet with the one who could beat her again at the upcoming tournament, the poor girl was completely devastated. The almighty Ray saw this. He quickly got himself a coach image, put on a mask, and decided to become a trainer for Amelia to the upcoming trials. He would not participate himself, so no one would prevent him from spending all his energy on improving his girlfriend in all parameters. At the same time, he meets a changed Albert. He too will go to the competition and hope to prove himself worthy there. A similar Amelia and continuing hard training Ray who wanted to know more about his temporary apprentice. So disguised as a girl through magic, Ray, wrapped in the uniform of a nearby academy, went to spy on Amelia's main rival, her longtime friend Ariana. He's going to have a little talk with her, get some interesting facts and come back. But Ariana is no slouch either. She saw the magic in her body and realized that it wasn't the girl who was sitting in front of her. But she was still surprised when Ray switched back to a man's voice. Nevertheless, the conversation between the heroes was not interrupted, and they agreed on the fact that the tournament will be a huge change, and who will be the winner will be decided only by a fair fight. That was the end of the conversation. Ray said goodbye to Ariana and her inconspicuous little sister, and returned to his friends at the base, from where the carriage and a group of Ray's students went before the tournament to visit Lida, so to speak, to raise his confidence. And some of the acquaintance with her directly helped a good morale boost. But instead of resting, the main character was given more work to do, naming the next possible opponents. They may show up at the tournament, and they call themselves the Dead Reapers. The gods are also bad as eugenicists, so you can't relax and watch all the battles without interruption. Although the Rhea would have to finish Amelia's training first. However, the climax of the last battle between the student and the teacher will not be shown to us right away. First, the tournament itself starts, where the first fights took place. Amelia, of course, was the winner in the opening battle, and the next contenders for passage through the standings were Ariana and her enemy the new Albert, who had changed himself 180 degrees. And although the advantage initially was all on his opponent, Albert, even without a chance to win, showed a beautiful fight. Well done, he deserves respect. There's no shame in losing to a girl like that, considering that Ariana has been training like a rabid fighter all her young life. Although of course it's not shameful to lose to such an opponent, unless you're Amelia, for whom it's also vital to take the lead in the tournament, which, as luck would have it, plays the opposite demotivating role. The existence of an aristocrat who has lost hope in herself, despite her wealth and power. It also happens that people want intangible benefits, but mental ones, and they are often harder to find in reality. Fortunately, all is not lost on Amelia. She has a Ray, who gives the girl a strong moral shoulder and convinces her of her own strength. A bonus reminder of the finals of the exam, when Amelia was able to impress G. This support should be more than enough for the student Ray to awaken a stream of energy for optimism. Before Amelia's rebellion, however, it will have to wait, for the Dead Reapers who illegally entered the guarded territory had shown up at the tournament, and it was for nothing that their faction stormed the competition. The guy has to watch the finals, and he has no time to deal with a bunch of losers. So having frozen all the bandits, Mr. returned to the front rows of the finalists to duel observers. And at the final stage of the battle between the two daughters of the higher families, Amelia, hearing the voice of support, was able to impress not only her friend but also the audience with her new strength, with which a victorious rematch with Ariana and the long-awaited connection of friendship was made. After all, it turned out that Ariana always wanted to be an example for her friend. And since she was surpassed, now they are back on par. The girls are happy, the families are happy, and the tournament comes to an end. But before that, there will be one last match between the seniors. In their final, everything was supposed to be scripted. There was a candidate to win, but even here it was not without surprises. A mysterious swordsman took the stage, winning the finals in less than a couple of seconds. By the way, our judge caught a glimpse of him, and in the course of the dialogue, Blade saw the guy as another great hero, a warrior of the mortal blade, and he's madly eager to fight with Mr. for the title of the strongest. Not at the moment. Deathblade has asked Ree to build up his strength and meet him in a year, when both are at their best. And the logical thing would probably have been to start preparing right away. But Ree, instead of improving his body, went back to school, where traditionally after the tournament began a week of cultural festival with performances from classes. And by Amelia's choice, her students would have to be cafeteria maids. It's both fun and cool, since no one can pass by without stopping by at least for a minute. However, while our boys were having fun and figuring out how to dress up the whole class in matching outfits, another girl named Rebecca from the Honorable Bradley family is having a tough time. Rebecca is one of the pillars of the academy. She's the backbone of the lovely Tea Party Circle and the Student Council. And such an important person suddenly has to marry wealthy Evan Bernstein. And in fact, this kind of marriage is not uncommon in academia. Usually rich families look for sons and daughters of similar status. But something makes Rebecca's close friends uneasy. It seems to them that their friend is caught in a trap, and who else but the main character they decide to ask for help. And to understand Evan's personality, maybe really it is all this plan. because otherwise Rebecca would hardly act as if in a death state, walk with a sad face, and even with her own sister Maria and Bradley, almost cut off all already fragile communication links. The girl has a total disagreement in her family. And amidst her marriage, Rebecca has broken down in conversation altogether. How fortunate that Rainey got past their situation, and within a week he had more information about Evan's fiancée. And yes, as you might expect, Evan is a hidden villain. Also like the dead Helena, one of the eugenics. His target, on the other hand, is a magical eye rebuckler capable of all sorts of miracles. His research on such eyes could lead Evan to discover new forms of magic. But so far, he is in no hurry to take them away, which means that he still has time to settle everything. And naturally, he began to somehow interact with the fisherwoman to get closer to her. Perhaps to find a way to her salvation in the proverbial search did not last long, as in the period of the maids himself, working undercover in a dress, found the very same key. All the answers were presented on a platter by Rebecca's sister Maria. She is the final piece in the Bradley family puzzle. All that remains is to protect Rebecca from Evan's influence. And you can sleep well, but the eugenics gang's resistance is just as active. He has a powerful icy blade and he can't get through the crowd of monsters, led by another freak with a giant mouth. However, if he has his brothers in arms watching his back, the percentage of victory will increase, so he splits the battlefield responsibilities and concentrates on saving the child. While Amelia, Albert and the others were merrily blasting hordes of monsters in turn in a secluded castle not far from the battleground in the cozy company of the uncomprehending Bradley sisters. Another new incident or otherwise plot twist has occurred. Even who took Rebecca as his wife turned out not to be Avon, but only an illusion created by the sorceress Elizabeth Revan. Liz is not on the side of the enemy, on the contrary, she asks to deal with them, and then help her classmate in restraining her power of the eyes, which began to awaken from the voluminous amount of feelings the girl has about Mary. And while the sisters manfully figure out who is to blame for what, Ray deals with the rest of eugenics, shutting down her power. Meanwhile, Maria and Rebecca hated each other, while simultaneously loving each other even more. Remembering all the hard moments of their lives in the family provoked the older sister's eyes to rise. That's when the Lord of the Ice Blade, Ried, came into play. As the strongest sacred of the seven, he held back the pain and concluded the aura of death under control, in consequence of which no one died, and the school reigns in the sense of future grief upon the return of Ried. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like this video. Good luck, everyone.